The sun had barely dipped below the horizon at Dubai International Airport when flight GZ-417 began pre-boarding. The evening sky glowed with a reddish haze, and the heat radiating off the tarmac made even experienced crew feel uneasy. Captain Aisha Rahman, a seasoned pilot known for her calm under pressure, stood in the cockpit flipping through the pre-flight maintenance logs. At first glance, it looked like a normal day's paperwork, minor notes, system checks, routine, signatures. But as she skimmed the final page, something immediately tightened in her chest. Asterisk, there they were again. Unexplained voltage spikes in the readings from the left engine's control unit. Not one spike, but several, recorded at irregular intervals. The notes from the ground crew simply read, "Possible sensor glitch, reset performed." It was the third time this glitch had appeared in the past month. Asterisk, Aisha frowned. She knew engines didn't just glitch. They either worked or they didn't, and when the left engine, the notoriously temperamental, a 912 turbine, started showing electrical anomalies, it was rarely a coincidence. Asterisk, she called the senior maintenance technician over. "I need clarity on these spikes," she said, tapping the circled data points on her tablet. "Did anyone actually open the engine panel and run a physical check?" Asterisk, the technician shook his head, looking slightly embarrassed. "We didn't get an alert from the system itself. So, we assumed it was a sensor fault." Asterisk, you assumed? Aisha repeated, her voice flat. He swallowed hard. Asterisk, we checked the diagnostics, Captain. Everything came back green after the reset. Asterisk, Aisha wanted to push further, but the clock was ticking. She looked out the cockpit window. Passengers were already gathering at the gate, unaware of the brewing tension beneath the aircraft's smooth exterior. She told herself she'd keep a close eye on the engine readings mid-flight. If anything seemed off, she'd divert. It wouldn't be the first time a pilot had to make a judgment call. Asterisk, meanwhile, down in the terminal, passengers began lining up. Among the first was a tall, thin man in his mid-40s, wearing a charcoal suit that didn't quite fit him. His eyes darted from person to person, never settling, as though he were searching for someone, or perhaps trying desperately to avoid being recognized. In his hands, he clutched a small metal briefcase secured with a complicated locking mechanism. Not once did he set it down. Asterisk, when the boarding agent asked him to place the case on the counter for a routine weight check, he froze. "I can hold it," he said quickly. "It doesn't leave my hands." Asterisk, the agent blinked, unsure. "Sir, it's just a standard asterisk." "No," he snapped, then caught himself. "I mean, please. I can't let it out of my sight." Asterisk, his agitation drew glances from passengers behind him. The agent eventually relented, but not without writing a note on her tablet. The man hurried down the jet bridge, gripping the case so tightly his knuckles went pale. Asterisk, Aisha stepped out of the cockpit to greet boarding passengers, something she liked to do when time allowed. When the nervous man passed her, she noticed the sweat dripping from his temple despite the cool cabin air. He nodded stiffly at her greeting, clutching the case so protectively she momentarily wondered if it contained something valuable. Jewelry, documents, perhaps even medication for a medical condition. Asterisk, but his eyes held fear. Not the fear of flying, but the fear of being hunted. Asterisk, back in the cockpit, First Officer Daniel Mercer ran through the remaining checklists. He was younger than Aisha, eager but competent. When she mentioned the voltage spikes, his brows knitted. "Think it's serious?" Asterisk, "I don't know," Aisha admitted. "But I don't like coincidences." Asterisk, boarding completed, the aircraft doors sealed with a hydraulic thump. The engine spooled up, humming with a familiar vibration that filled the cabin floor. Aisha watched her display screens closely as the left engine stabilized. RPM normal. Temperature steady. Output smooth. Then, just as she prepared to taxi, the cabin lights flickered. Once, twice. Daniel looked up. Power transfer? Shouldn't be, Aisha said under her breath. The light steadied. The displays returned to full brightness. The flight crew exchanged an uneasy glance, but the tower had already cleared them for departure. With a slow, cautious breath, Aisha guided the aircraft onto the runway. The engines roared. The aircraft surged forward. Passengers gripped armrests, the nervous man clutching his briefcase even tighter. At takeoff speed, the wheels lifted free from the berth. No one on board knew they had just left behind the last moment of safety they would experience for the rest of the night. 3 hours after departure, Flight GZ-417 glided through the darkness above the Indian Ocean. Inside the cockpit, the soft glow of the instruments cast pale blue halos across Captain Aisha Rahman's and First Officer Daniel Mercer's faces. The flight had been uneventful so far, almost suspiciously so, considering the flicker during takeoff and the maintenance anomalies. Still, Aisha kept her eye on the left engine's display, checking the temperature readings every few minutes. *4. A long while, everything looked normal. Then, without warning, the numbers spiked, not gradually, explosively. Engine left temp, 1,240 degrees Celsius * vibration level. Red electrical output. Erratic alarms shrieked through the cockpit. An assault of warning tones layered atop one another like chaos in digital form. Daniel jolted upright. What? That's impossible. We weren't even pushing full thrust. Aisha's hands flew across the controls. Shut down auto-regulation, she ordered. Switch to manual override now. Daniel complied, flipping switches so fast. His fingers blurred. But instead of stabilizing, the engine data became more unstable. Numbers jumped irrationally, temperatures rising far beyond what any engine should physically be able to reach, then suddenly plunging back down. Electrical current readings flashed in violent red blocks, as if the system itself couldn't comprehend what was happening. And then the worst alarm of all began to sound, the one no pilot ever wants to hear. Autopilot failure, navigation compromised, manual control required, the autopilot disengaged with a loud mechanical thunk. The aircraft lurched left sharply, throwing both pilots against their harnesses. Aisha gripped the yoke. I have control. But the plane resisted, sluggish and heavy, as though something were pulling against her commands. In the cabin, oxygen masks deployed with a sudden thump. Passengers screamed as turbulence shook the aircraft. Flight attendants strapped themselves into their jump seats, calling out instructions over the roar of wind buffeting the fuselage. At row 18. The tall, nervous man's briefcase, which he had refused to store in the overhead compartment, jerked from his grasp, smashing onto the aisle carpet. The lock snapped open under the force. Papers spilled out. A flight attendant named. Leah saw them scatter, pages filled with engineering schematics, electrical grid diagrams, and what looked disturbingly like the blueprint of an aircraft's engine control unit, specifically the same model used on this very plane. Aisha fought the yoke with everything she had. The aircraft kept banking. Instruments flickered again, turning black for a second before rebooting. In that blink of darkness, she felt blind, disconnected from the machine she was supposed to control. When the screens lit back up, the warnings were worse. Daniel checked the electrical routing. On it, but something's rewriting the outputs, or overriding them. This doesn't look like a mechanical fault. Aisha stiffened. What do you mean, overriding? It's like The control signals are being hijacked. Aisha had no time to process the implication. A violent jolt threw the aircraft downward. Drinks toppled, passengers cried out, and luggage rattled violently in the overhead bins. Somewhere near the rear of the plane, someone prayed loudly. Their voice trembling between sobs. In the cabin aisle, the tall man scrambled desperately to gather the documents from his open briefcase. Leah approached him, wide-eyed but steady from years of emergency training. Sir, are you all right? What? Are these? She picked up a sheet that had slid toward her foot. Her breath caught. It was unmistakable. She had seen enough safety diagrams in her training to recognize the exact model of the left engine, with the electrical control unit circled in red ink, annotated with warnings in frantic handwriting. Compromise, do not activate. System has been tampered with. Leah's pulse raced. Sir, what is this? The man grabbed her wrist. Please take me to the cockpit. The pilots need to see this. They don't know what's happening. Before she could respond, another blast of turbulence shook the plane. The cabin lights flickered, dimmed, and then surged back. Overhead compartments rattled like they might tear free. Leah pulled the man to his feet. Follow me. In the cockpit, Aisha fought to maintain altitude. Daniel tried multiple emergency resets, but the systems kept resisting. It was as if the aircraft was fighting them on purpose, responding to a different master. A sharp knock sounded on the locked cockpit door. This is Leah, came the muffled voice. We need to come in now. Daniel glanced at Aisha. She nodded. He unlocked the door. Leah stumbled in with the briefcase man, who immediately spilled the papers onto the central console. I know what's happening, he said, trembling. You're not experiencing a malfunction. Someone sabotaged this aircraft's engine controls. And they did it long before we ever left the ground. The cockpit fell silent except for the alarms. Aisha's voice lowered to a razor-thin whisper. Who sabotaged it? The man swallowed. The same people. Who are hunting me? For a moment, the cockpit was filled with nothing but the shrill alarms and the heavy breathing of three people trying to process the impossibility unfolding before them. Outside, the sky was pitch black, the ocean invisible beneath the clouds. The aircraft shuddered again, just enough to remind everyone that time was running out. The nervous man steadied himself with one hand on the console. His voice shook, but the urgency in it cut sharply through the chaos. My name is Dr. Elias Varin, he began. I'm well. I was a systems engineer for a private aerospace contractor. He swallowed, glancing at the malfunctioning displays. Your left engine isn't experiencing a fault. It's been deliberately altered, and what you're seeing now, this is exactly what they designed. Daniel's face tightened. Who is they? The Kestrel Group. Elias said, a black market engineering syndicate. They've been infiltrating major aviation companies for years, sabotaging systems, creating failures, and then selling exclusive fixes to governments and aircraft manufacturers for millions. He ran a shaking hand through his hair. It's extortion on a global scale, and no one even knows they exist. Aisha kept her hands on the controls, jaw clenched. You're saying someone deliberately planted a fault in our engine on a commercial flight? Not a fault, Elias corrected quietly. A remote override pathway, a hidden access point built into the engine control software. They can manipulate temperature readings, electrical outputs, autopilot systems, even flight surfaces. Daniel turned pale. You're telling me this plane can be flown from the ground? Not flown, Elias said. but disrupted. Steered into failure. Forced into catastrophe. The plane shuddered violently again, dropping 100 feet in a stomach-lurching dip. Warning lights danced across the displays. The left engine temperature spiked to a number far beyond its operational limits, then snapped back down. A telltale sign of software interference. Aisha's knuckles whitened. So why target this flight? Why tonight? Elias opened the briefcase fully. Inside were printouts, flash drives, and scribbled notes. He held up a set of diagrams with red circles and annotations. I stole everything, he said. Proof of their sabotage program, schematics, internal communications, activation codes. I plan to deliver them to international regulators in Singapore. Daniel blinked. You were defecting. Elias nodded miserably. They found out. They always do. A deep low boom reverberated through the fuselage. The cockpit shook hard. Everyone flinched as the aircraft tilted sharply left. Aisha fought the controls, muscles straining. What was that? Daniel shouted ... before anyone could answer. New alarms erupted. Left engine damage detected. Structural impact. Pressure loss in engine. BOI. Elias's face drained of color. No, that wasn't supposed to happen yet. Aisha shot him a deadly glare. Yet? What did you not tell us? He hesitated, guilt written across his face. The override system has a final stage. If attempts to regain manual control keep failing, the program triggers a self-destruct mechanism to eliminate evidence of tampering. You're saying it will detonate the engine? Daniel demanded. It won't explode the whole plane, Elias said quickly, but it will destroy the engine casing and compromise the wing, enough to cause catastrophic loss of control. Aisha's voice went cold. And we just hit that stage? Elias didn't answer. He didn't have to. Another violent jolt rocked the aircraft. A muffled explosion shook the left side like a thunderclap. Panels rattled. Smoke alarms blared. The plane rolled hard left, so hard that unsecured items in the cockpit slid across the floor. Elias grabbed onto the wall. That was the engine bay blowing out. The wing's been hit. Aisha pulled with all her strength. Daniel, shut off the left engine, what's left of it. Seal the fuel lines. Reroute hydraulic pressure. Daniel moved fast, sweat dripping down his forehead. Hydraulics are slow, response time is reduced. We're losing flight surface control. Aisha gritted her teeth. We need to descend. Now. They began an emergency descent into darkness, the plane quivering like a wounded animal. Behind them, the cabin erupted into panic. Cries, prayers, shouted instructions, all muffled by the roar of wind and alarms. Elias watched helplessly. I should have never boarded. I should have gone into hiding. But I thought I could outrun them. Aisha shot him a razor-edged glance. Right now, I don't care why you're here. I care about one thing, how to shut down whatever is still controlling my aircraft. Elias quickly opened his case again. The override commands respond to proximity, meaning the further we get from their control relay, the weaker their signal becomes. Daniel whipped his head around. Control relay? Where? A private island facility near the Maldives, Elias said. If we descend and change course, we might get far enough to break the connection. Aisha didn't hesitate. Fine. Buckle in. And pray your intel is right. The aircraft plunged into the night, damaged, sabotaged, and barely under human control while the truth of the conspiracy hung heavy in the cockpit. Asterisk. They were not just fighting an engine. Asterisk. They were fighting invisible enemies thousands of miles away. The descent began like a controlled slide into chaos. The damaged aircraft groaned as if protesting every foot it lost in altitude. Flight GZ-417 trembled against the wind, its left wing leaving a faint trail of smoke that stretched behind the plane like a dying comet. The cockpit lights flickered every few seconds, bathing Aisha, Daniel, and Elias in alternating glows of blue, red, and darkness. Asterisk. Aisha pulled gently on the yoke, coaxing the wounded aircraft downward. Altitude passing 30,000. Daniel reported, his voice strained but steady. Right engine stable. Hydraulics still sluggish. Left wing holding, but not by much. Asterisk. Aisha didn't look away from the window. We only needed to hold long enough to get us down. Asterisk. Behind them, the sounds of terrified passengers carried through the cockpit door, crying children, shouted prayers, the clipped voices of flight attendants giving instructions with rehearsed calm. But beneath the emotion was something deeper, a collective realization that survival wasn't guaranteed. Asterisk. Elias sat strapped into the jump seat, gripping his briefcase as if it contained not just evidence, but every chance they had left. If we're far enough from their signal relay, he said quietly, the override should weaken soon. Asterisk. Aisha's eyes flicked to him. Should? Asterisk. It's distance-based, he insisted. The manual overrides will start working again once the hijack signals drop off, but I can't predict when. Asterisk. Daniel muttered, perfect. We're fighting a ghost with limited range. Asterisk. Another shudder racked the plane. Aisha fought to keep it steady as warning lights flashed. Pressure loss, left wing airframe compromised, drag extreme, come on. She whispered to the aircraft as if it were a living creature. Just a little longer. Asterisk. Daniel scanned the terrain. Radar. Nearest landmass is 100 kilometers southeast. A chain of small Indonesian islands, some are uninhabited. Runway availability unknown. Asterisk. We don't need a real runway, Aisha said. Just a stretch of flatland long enough to slide to a stop. Asterisk. The aircraft dropped another 1,000 feet with a sickening lurch. Passengers screamed. Loose items rattled like hailstones inside the overhead compartments. Asterisk. Aisha steadied the descent. Daniel, check the emergency location transmitter. If we go down, I want rescue teams heading our way immediately. Asterisk. Daniel checked. ELT is functional. Broadcasting automatically if we hit hard. If? Elias echoed weakly. Aisha gave him a dark look. Don't start. Asterisk. For 3 long minutes, the plane continued its descent in heavy turbulence. The connection between the sabotaging signal and the aircraft systems grew weaker. Slowly, haltingly, the flight controls responded. More accurately, the autopilot error warnings dimmed. The engine readings stabilized. It wasn't perfect, but the aircraft felt more theirs again. Asterisk. Daniel noticed it first. Controls tightening up. Manual inputs are responding quicker. Asterisk. Elias exhaled shakily. We're out of their range. Asterisk. The cabin lights brightened. Slightly. The plane steadied just enough to give Aisha a sliver of confidence. Asterisk. Daniel, she said, tell me what we've got. Asterisk. He looked down at his displays. We're approaching a small island. Looks like a decommissioned military strip. It's rough, short, possibly not maintained for years. Asterisk. Aisha nodded. Won't be pretty. It'll be a miracle if the landing gear doesn't snap, he added. Elias swallowed hard. What if it does? Asterisk. Then we belly land, Aisha said simply. And pray. Asterisk. The descent steepened. At 12,000 feet, the clouds parted just enough for Aisha to see the faint silhouette of an island below, a dark mass surrounded by churning waves. A narrow strip, barely visible, cut across one end of the land. No lights, no guidance, no guarantee. Asterisk. This is it. Asterisk. Daniel braced both hands on the console. Right engine holding. Airspeed manageable. We're still leaning. Left. Asterisk. I'll compensate. Aisha adjusted the trim, muscles straining. The yoke fought her like a stubborn animal. Asterisk. At 5,000 feet, they hit a pocket of turbulence so violent it punched the aircraft upward. Alarms wailed. The plane shuddered. Something metallic groaned ominously under the floor. Asterisk. Elias squeezed. His eyes shut. Daniel gripped his harness. Asterisk. Aisha kept her voice calm. Everyone hold on. Asterisk. The runway, if it could even be called that, grew larger through the cockpit window. Uneven, cracked, overgrown at the edges. But it was land. It was life. Final approach, Daniel announced, though his voice trembled. Asterisk. Aisha lowered. The landing gear. The right side deployed cleanly. The left side stuttered, jammed, then extended with a metallic scream. Asterisk. The aircraft came in too fast. Too low. Too damaged. But it came in. The wheels hit first, the impact so violent that the cabin erupted into cries. The plane bounced, slammed back down, and skidded. Sparks burst along the left side where damaged metal scraped asphalt. The right engine roared as Aisha throttled reverse thrust. Asterisk. Brake. Brake! Daniel shouted. Asterisk. I am. Aisha yelled back. Asterisk. The aircraft veered, skidding off the runway. Grass and dirt tore beneath it. Small trees snapped like twigs. The left wing clipped a mound of earth and crumpled inward with a deafening crunch. Asterisk. Finally, with a long guttural groan, the plane slid to a stop meters before the dense jungle. Silence. Then screams of relief. Crying, shaky laughter. The raw sound of survival. Asterisk. Aisha slumped back, chest heaving. Daniel covered his face with shaking hands. Elias stared at the ruined wing with tears in his eyes. Asterisk. You did it, he whispered. You saved them. Asterisk. Aisha exhaled slowly. No, she corrected. We did. Asterisk. Behind them, the first passengers began to unbuckle, voices trembling, but alive. Asterisk. Against all odds, sabotage, conspiracy, explosions, and a deadly silent enemy, every soul on flight GZ-417 had survived. Asterisk. The most dangerous plane in the sky had been conquered.